Hello, America. Attend, beseech, America. The Forever's campus calls you home now, each. It is everywhere. It is every place I want. Republic's way, means. Not alone, because that is invisible but still discernible. So it's not the hyper-invisible. But we can use what is not the Republic. In other words, exceptions and exception nature are relevant, where and how criminal insidiousness is a value that can be positive. In other words, where and how nature is positive by demonstrating negative value nature progressions, action natures, and demonstration of a system that would entertain the laws that the breaching method had syntactically entrenched in America before it was America, before the founders of America were even born. And this is relevant too because it was entrenched in other countries before the founding of their parents were ever born. So, for example, relevant to treatments by the names of leaders, where they left out how locations, areas, and states were self-valued, criminally foreign influenced, and where and how their nature was demonstrating manifest demonstrations of this in where and how everybody was and is actually manifest as fact treatment nature with fact treatment nature qualities. So criminal insidiousness natures of positive and negative treatments were in collusion, where people were justifying their time treatments, where people went before courts, for example, in all kinds of instances, relativity, with all kinds of, for example, as historical artifacts, real or made up, per their treatments of witch trials, and per where and how they left out the relevance of that, where and how it's right, where George Washington had to come right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War in Wethersfield, Connecticut, and he had to leave slavery entrenched north and south, and how he was furthering our real founders' plans, our real founders' plan, our other real founders, how they were also counter-extorted to defend the language that to defend positions that would eventually put up where and how they and we were supposed to say distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously the same way, so we could censor it. If not, that the Constitution should be unabridged. See, offensively, this maintained complete remote possessions of people pretending they could make treatments by the law, that their opinions / convictions are worth what they say they're worth and pretend they're worth, like their treatments of emotions to and their passions by that. Focusing on emotion, but their passions by that too. Because emotions and passions have a conjunction /s, which is hyper simultaneous. See, the hyper simultaneous is relevant to the value of exceptions and of exception nature, and where and how our founders left, where they didn't have complete free speech, or they would have been sensed as the ones that forced people to blame on other things, others, ourselves, why they had to break those laws. Actually, those laws, not just relevant to witch trials and slavery and uses of it, not to say, oh, well, it's economic, so we have to do it. In other words, there's a guy in the ground is still in that trap, still being tortured. So we have right through wars, complete possession over where and how we are fact-cheating nature, where and how the identities of the law are distinctly from ourselves, but they are kept with the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, originally still uncharged, and how and why. Again, by the breaching method, distinctly, non-distinctly measured and maintained, blamed on other things, others, ourselves, the real reason how. And nature keeps demonstrating that too, and it knew it would do that. Knew that individually grouped and together, all identity grounds, voices, names / titles would increasingly be valuing having been, where and how everyone's still now blaming the real cause of negative value nature progressions, acts and natures, other things other than themselves. When they bring up subjects like World War One, World War Two, Hitler's name, they're bringing up the individual volume science. This is where and how they have employed passions and emotions roles at all locations, and with the news media involved with identity thefts and frauds and slanders, criminally foreign influenced slash hyper criminally foreign influenced. And they were blaming since founding, they were trying to counter as fact human nature. Same way the Native Americans, and then with them, now everyone's together. Abridged sciences, not capable of remembering when from before the sciences became criminally foreign influenced. That which is hyper simultaneous was valued honestly and hyper honestly, and they knew how to reveal evolution's fruits and gifts, means out of nowhere. So what is positive? I mean, what is hot and what is cold? Simultaneously, they are not just in demonstration of the warm, because all three of those things and together, they are in demonstration of the simultaneous, how they have a semi-nature relationship to it, and like so the warmth which guides. But see, the ancients had a sophistication to know, to discern how criminal insidiousness is generated as the value of identities that try to go by systems other. This had been revealed in ancient times and had been remembered in semi-ancient times, and at least part of semi-ancient times. But then semi-ancient times came where they no longer remembered it because they had other replaced, as the short words in Revelations where and how the perfect answers are only increasing value. So where they have sense and sensibilities in classrooms, and they have people that are going to defend those sense and sensibilities regarding uses of Hitler's name, they are also timed onto those locations, the individuals in those classrooms. There are classroom placements that kept originally and still all the uses of differential criminal foreign influences increasingly, where how it was the same volume, it was constantly and is constantly. In other words, countries A through Z grouped still, they are shared here and there by nature. But then further, since before our founders were born, the human fact human nature was coupled with how that is true. Now coupled with countries A through Z as identities they can't defend themselves and afford use by means by identity where and how they're all shared. And while not simultaneously, everything is in demonstration of the hyper simultaneous and how it is nature. So the parts of your body are distinctly nature, but they share a semi-nature relationship to your complete nature, and that still shares further relativity and relationship to hyper relationship to its complete identity, that which is space slash existence, distinctly slash non-distinctly. In slash, we know that the identity of the volume of forever is increasingly relevant and increasingly existent. And who denies the existence of it have manifest with their fact human nature. For example, when someone uses passions and emotions regarding if someone uses the name Hitler or someone tries to defend Hitler, in other words, the locations, areas, and states of the human A through Z, identities of groups. They were already criminally foreign influenced. Now that's relevant to where and how individual leaders are going to make naive decisions. They're going to be forced to. Already locations, areas, and states were forced to entertain and to self-value roles with criminal insidious, criminally foreign influence, positive and negative treatments, identity treatments. Because in defenses of themselves, countries A through Z, it was simultaneously increasingly not realizing, having to value how the sciences really came to be abridged. And this is increasingly relevant to the value, as the value of the Constitution unabridged. So, for example, right through wars, it recorded maintenance to unrealized, but complete self. Also, because how unrealized? Because completely self-valued at the short words, relevant to the most serious questions, like what was slavery about? What motivated it? So you can't use the truths for lies. In other words, what made the different? They bring up. We're going to use Harriet Beecher Stowe's phrase, Uncle Tom, to show how our own would measure and maintain, distinctly from the breaching method, tactical and hyper-tactical, worse than criminal incompetence, incapable of even affording discerned. All that is capable even of little kids of discerning relative to that which is differential criminal foreign influence, how everyone's opinions and / convictions / names treatment. Those are simultaneously sequence value / hyper simultaneous value treatments. No. Greetings, Ron Adams. Block of tribes. Legion. Here, the species body volume longs to rise, long lost. The course, each manual, yet compromised, individually grouped and together. The nations stand as guys. All rise. So, no, what they do, they have psychology and psychiatry associated with physical delusions still. And now these are also retired and standing doctors that have guns and badges and that have judges involved with mental health care where they have physical delusions formally that are simultaneously, though, also criminally foreign influenced at all locations, areas, and states. And they're being and having been involved with all evidence data reception, kept needing to hide, not by accident, with instances, roles with that differentially criminally foreign influenced, for example, had nothing to do. There were people that were, the breaching method knew that colonists A through Z were going to increasingly hurt themselves while they're hurting the Native Americans A through Z. While they knew the Native Americans A through Z were going to increasingly hurt themselves as fact treatment nature. And then in responses to that, remote control drones are used where sense and sensibilities, individually grouped and together, are self-valued. Like, for example, with the January 6th Commission, they're simultaneously self-valuing how there was worse than criminal incompetence on their side. Other fact treatments involved with sequence shift cover-ups, remote uses of the FBI cover-ups, other agencies, per their roles with that worse than criminally foreign influence, logic and passions and emotions as identity. They're stacking databases with lies and making confessions into that so people can't speak about what is actually recorded. For example, one of the ways they hurt every American sickly distinctly is to keep sickly non-distinctly from being discerned. And that's it's an identity theft slash fraud slash slander method where we can discern that one way. We have to discern how its parts are used individually, grouped and together by an order by them, per uses by them, which are distinct from the uses of everybody else. But they're also non-distinct because everyone else missed this since founding. It's recorded manifest when people make treatments of American history's names, where and how they leave and left out how our founders had to counter-extort to other founders to put that theater narrative different. They had to blame other things, others, and ourselves for the real reasons they played the roles with the phenomena that just happened to get up. Them saying, the Constitution should get unabridged, while their logic simultaneously was preventing it, was still in collusion as those identities of sophistication as criminal insidiousness nature at all locations, areas, states, so they were incapable of defending their positive and negative treatments, identity treatments, sequence value treatments as the only form of track treatments, but in collusion with that which already had been differentially criminally foreign influence. So this effectively kept the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and roles with everyone down to the interbranch and the military, all exception nature tied to them, kept down to uses of corners, needing to hide the same illusions by acting things and then having each other pretend to perceive it and really perceive things wrong. Like, for example, so they fight about with passions and emotions when they use Hitler's name because they're speaking about an individual, but no one realizes this. So they're leaving out what is actually recorded. So all these countries, like with nuclear weapons and things, they have roles with psychology, with all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes at locations where they originally healthcare, real people trying to be healthcare. They're forced with lawyers too that originally still were in collusion with that breaching method, a torture method. So know how the World Trade Center attack brought torture, self-value. Self-valued roles, blaming on other things, others, ourselves, how they self-value the Constitution, abridged and pretending others simultaneously, offensively forcing preemptively qualities of fact-keeping nature that can't defend themselves and us from what exploits that, measures and maintains that distinctly from our own, that measure and maintain and self-cultivate that which was propagated for that, to be blamed on other things, others, and selves, and ourselves increasingly. And then to have defenses of that, increasingly incapable as all styles of nature of, convictions. They're wealthy, independent man who is now doing well his mind since escaping from years of experience in psychomental influence hypermetrics. Criminal foreign influences are roles at locations, areas, and states were employed other than its own. But is complete. In other words, all the roles with slavery that were on paper discernible. There were other roles with that. There were other motivations, natures, needs, and interests with that. It measures and maintains, when we bring up slavery, how we leave out the torture method, because there were functions by that, because there was a controlling function. The same way computers work, they're a mimic of the database-oriented, hyper-archetypal human fact, human nature breaching method. One of the things that is commonly that everyone missed is how it is an identity theft slash fraud slash slander method, and uses of names, like with American history, relevant to where and how they leave out how slavery was left entrenched north and south, for example. That's increasingly valuable to discern all the ways that there are hyper-evidentially manifest things with the ground, distinctions, differences that are in the way of the discernment of differences' actual course. for example. So I'll drop the force because greater than and more finite than, and while being the value of the force is that which is the value of that which is hyper simultaneous. And we are simultaneously supposed to agree and not agree, and or be a mixture differential to fact nature quality. This is also where nature, see, the nature of the law has not been heard. And not only it's short words told right. So not only has it not been heard, the breaching method knew that all identities of sophistication / non-sophistication would be only realized, incapable of defending how they feel good about themselves, positive or negative about themselves, in collusion with that which has been stacking identity theft fraud roles with people that offensively make statements and confessions to strangers, and with complete strangers too. For example, where and how they have all such technology and everything like that, they still have missing persons problems. They still have problems where they have been preventing people from reporting types of things, because having people speak and react to things where and how they are separating types of issues, that was and is effectively used to keep the branches of government, all exceptions in nature, tied to them, in collusion also with overt criminal enterprises and everyone else that comes before them, kept needing to defend styles as well of logic that nature is demonstrating, can't defend themselves, their opinions and convictions, in us from what is exploiting and having exploited that right through wars. American history, it can't be told. I'm not one name, so people can know all they want about um all the names and things after that. All you have to understand, and the way they have this is obfuscated and not with common books. So then if you don't, if you lose your book, you can't even find it again. Right, regarding James Madison's roles with this, for example. And this is relevant to Marbury versus Madison, denied. Real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice. See, but even after James Madison brought Marbury versus Madison to defense, and with the Constitution supposed to be unabridged, they still had and have self-value. People using and having used all treatments of positive and negative, like power and might, as fact treatment nature, as courts, like, for example, regarding treatments of Jim Crow laws, they are still measured and maintained by a breaching method, shocking laws and shocking all responses to that, because all cases have been used remotely. They prevent people religious rights and simultaneously need to be pretending other. And how they've been getting away with that is relevant to where and how they've had the physical delusions interbranch juxtaposed with criminally foreign influence fact treatments and offensive affronts preventing mandated law all locations. And how they get away with it is also why we need to focus on how it is an identity theft / fraud / slander method. So we have people that pretend passions and emotions regarding Hitler, regarding how they perceive others' words, and then they just make summaries that are dishonest because they are sequence collusions also with this totally different religions with their identity ground locations involved with the identity theft, fraud, slander method, /s, and their exploitation of exceptions. So we could use some of the most negative things in life to demonstrate, as positive, but we have to be using what is positive and negative simultaneously. But already this invested a whole bunch of all names, locations, areas, and states to self-valued, criminally foreign influence, positive treatments, negative treatments, names treatments, isms treatments, physical delusions juxtaposed with criminally foreign influence premises treatments formally and informally in collusion. What they share are roles self-valued, offensively preventing writing and mandated law, interbranch and collusion, while exception nature with them, kept hiding the same sequence shifts, finite active progressive roles. So at those three locations, and at all other locations, further and further collusion from that, because they need to hide from nature's means left to demonstrate that. So we must track the devil through our own, while through others simultaneously, here through there, here and there, countries A through Z have now been recorded self-valued, how grouped and together, united, but per the breaching method, tactically ulterior from where and how we are united and divided by nature, honestly, by per its system, which is in demonstration of its complete, in other words, like just like we are all the parts of our body, we can only be. It's where and how it is relevant and hyper relevant, where and how we could only be, like the parts of a body, a semi-nature relationship to its identity of volume, but its identity of volume is relationship to itself, and the value of that is only increasing. So we could tap into this, but instead, everyone's preventing offensively, and everyone's styles of making allegations of people outside of courts, outside of police locations, outside of schools, distinctly from also on those locations, relevant as collusion with the identity theft fraud method, has complete remote possession of people preemptively valuing sequence shifts, like kids seeking out others that they don't know, and so unnaturally, before they know them, and connections between that. So they invest the intelligence community, never having been liberated from criminal foreign influences, self-valued how having been and being differentially criminally foreign influenced, specifically to keep the identities of the branches pretended they have integrity, and to keep the overt criminal enterprises and everyone else at locations, including how intersciences, including grouped, including how the identities of other countries are shared in an additional way, /s, all increasingly affront /s to the way we are shared. The identities of other countries are actually shared here by nature. See, those additional ways are really only ways pushing away the real way. We are supposed to be bound. The real way. We are supposed to be independent. See, individual, see body of species. One, vaccine is fun. One way. Many pray vaccines. It teaches things. So how we can do this too, we have to address all locations of the ground having been tactically denatured. All. And that simultaneously has to be aware / hyper aware with our methods of countering it, that and how some, it is meant to be sickly distinctly against everyone, but against some people more worse, so they could keep that self-value with everyone's styles of responses to it, and including ignoring it, that which is hyper-evidential regarding this, that which is the importance of having the value of what is hyper-evidential allowed to be used by people, free speech. So interbranch and all private tied to them, they're still criminally foreign influence, pretending they don't understand people, pretending they don't understand how there have been roles and could be roles, planting evidences at locations before relevant to and as their instances that come before their courts, even ones that have nothing to do with them. They already use those locations with other instances. And in other words, they're stacking illusions. They're using collusions between plaintiffs and defendants that even they don't understand. And where they understand, they only understand to the extent they had to hide lies. They had to counter, everyone around everybody, simultaneously, but to be pretending to be honestly, that honestly that is natural is being and having been applied. Naive reactions after, that simple logic in each basic grade is denied its relevance in the next grades. So, for example, too, with the pseudo sophistication that the bar itself is with lawyers, multi-front. Do I like bagels? Yes. There was a person named Chet Casper. I don't know who there are people from. There are people named Brendan Leahy, and there's a person named who sat next to me in 6th grade named Robert Heimgartner, and a former Mayor Gold involved with his kids, and a Chet Casper, and something to do with bagels. With people, and also with like an O'Brien family, with people that are also involved with Sandy Hook, with a whole bunch of different police names and courts people, and where they do this in the background, where they prevent writing and don't even know the people, and they've been, they were just pulled into narratives. So they pretend people make conspiracy theories, for example. And they pretend that people are holding on to other people's names because they don't even know us. And they that's one of the things they criminally do. They make people pretend emotions and passions and pretend motivations, even when those motivations are real. Like they influence them with their roles with, all natures of things, good and bad, that interbranch family members, the standards originally instilled. They let them explode, they were criminally foreign influence. So they make exceptions, exception nature, and criminally, because people want to just ignore the criminal foreign influence at all locations, the relevance of it. For example, where we are fact treatment agent. No, but in other words, yes, I like bagels, but I like, no, in other words, I'm trying to show you too, like, there are identity of the ground locations. There's a corner of Southstein Highway and Wells Road that was also brought up, involved with, like, there is intelligence community with Central Connecticut State University. Now they were involved with various police forms and their family members since they were kids. So with all programs, but from what is on off the locations, also intercampuses, they've been stacking illusions and databases where and how they exploit where things come before courts, where thing comes, but where instances where the interbranch and everyone else's opinions have involvements with actually recorded instances and the actually recorded value and value treatments in there, like sequence treatments, sequence value. So psychiatry has a whole bunch of countries involved with courts and with prisons and with the state judicial branch offices of Connecticut, for example, and with the state prison offices and locations next to them, including houses, including businesses next to them, including a post. Oh, that's a different spot. But the insidious criminal foreign influences are trying to affect natural language patterns with so-called tongue twisters. So the fact-treatment nature In other words, criminal insidiousness is where and how we are, fact, human nature. I'm not a lawyer. It's an identity of the ground. Relativity, where we are, we are. Language is an identity of the ground. Electrical engineering as an identity of volume that only increases, as an identity of the as value, as the hyper-simultaneous, which has a value that is increasingly relevant to where and how all subjects individually grouped and together could and are being and having been conceived. But see, they are leaving out exceptions and exception nature because they are preventing all the styles of logic that had what is actually recorded, replaced. They're leaving out, in other words, formal. The sciences share an identity that is increasingly the answer inseparable from answer /s. So why and how things functions on a calculator, and why and how 2 and 3D are defined distinctly with computers is relative to where and how there are only 3 dimensions, for example. And all appearances of exception nature are in demonstration of the same thing. Like, for example, there are only 3 parts of the cell: the cell body, the cell nucleus, and the cell wall. While simultaneously, there are the exception nature of 2 other identities of exception nature. We know about the gases coming through the plant that has, for even plants. I never studied human cells under the microscope. They should have those things. Imagine the time it saves education and then subjects treatments by having those, by not having people have to put slides and things like that. You know what I mean? Tiny Tony tied to Trace Teddy's trader and trekked 20 tons of tantalines to triangulate it. I don't get it. They are using these devices to trip up speakers and politicians to do their bidding. See, everyone, the difference of being a politician, they're a certain kind of victim where and how the breaching method would maintain nature's demonstrations of that, blamed on other ourselves, where and how people are making fact achievements anyway, while leaving and staying styles of fact achieving nature that could not and cannot afford themselves to have free speech self-value. So the breaching method that was entrenched not just in America, but it was entrenched in the countries A through Z, and how they were locked and shared here and there. Note with policing and with of our kids shared here and there with campuses. Me, I don't have any kids. I'm single lady. Vaccines, but so we are in a trap. This even has down to, in other words, so there's a Chet Casper I never had a class with in my life. And there are people associated with the Wethersfield, with the state judicial branch offices in Wethersfield, and with buildings next to the state capitol and next to Fox Connecticut News involved with identity thefts and frauds with Chet Casper and something to do with bagels and a former mayor Gold and other mayors and their kids and their roles with a former Detective Dillon, his wife Anna Dillon, and how she uses Anna Dillon and sometimes Annie Dillon, and or if those are two different people, actually, because they have roles with switching names, officers, and people involved further with the principal child abusers campus. And as people involved intercities with more campuses and more people with Sandy Hook, Newtown then and now who are involved also with the FBI, with wire crimes, and with NBC Connecticut News, WFSB, and Fox Connecticut News. They also communicate they were influenced to pretend that it's personal when I say that, because they prevent means private too. They pretend they were supposed to pretend about privacy. They've been bringing up their girlfriends' names, so and involved with them with identity thefts, fraud, slanders, and then they involve their family members, then their neighbors. Everyone is increasingly self-valued lies and rumors about everyone else that are increasingly relevant where and how the interbranch with the overt criminal enterprises have been on and off our campuses, also with private ones, and that insidiousness kept with people where they're preventing a response by also mixing other names and other motivations juxtaposed with the ones that are apparent when they have instances between kids, when they have instances between elderly and the people that work for them, only people that want to work for them. You know, we have victim predators, and they have sustained uses of defenses of themselves as predators, as responses to that which tactically replaced. This keeps people that don't even know each other needing to self-value the same sequence of finite active progressive lies, insidious positive and negative treatments used to get over on strangers and used to motivate people pretending. It is badass to eat bagels. Is it tactical? I don't understand about the bagels, but I don't know that has to do with aesthetics, but it also has to do with how the Native Americans had most probably cultivated what nature had shown them regarding how to cause positive value nature progressions, acts and natures. So seeds had been revealed because, you know, everything makes a different kind of soil. And then there are mixtures of that. And the ground had an identity of relationship to water, to itself, its natural system that was native pure. That was interpreted by the Republic and by the Campus Marcius that was native pure, tied to what's really going to cause positive value nature progressions, acts and nature. So Hitler's name is recorded self-valued being and having been used offensively to pretend passions and emotions, where and how the interbranch, our country, other countries, and grouped, they already pretended passions and emotions regarding their A and B logic treatments. A therefore B. They're leaving out the value of the Trinity, because it is simultaneously value as nature, value / nature, and nature / value. And for example, where and how everything at once, the hyper simultaneous is actually in demonstration to us. So sequence value, they're preventing the value of denials of sequence shifts from being reported to presidents' voices per complete remote possession of how, for example, they use needs and means to pretend they didn't tell about how they have roles with other countries on and off the campuses, with the ones from our schools involved with identity thefts and frauds, with the men and women from those other countries, and with their family members and neighbors since we were kids, and with fake news. There was a hello people. There was a so fake news is evidence, and that's a whole bunch of evidences at once. For example, it is proof of self motivations with self-valued sequence shifts that are also relevant as where there are means to discern the invisible but still discernible criminal insidiousness natures with the World Trade Center attack location right before /s right before the attack and leading up to the attack, and then since, as people in collusion, also having been in collusion intercities through time, as people interstates through time. For example, there is my town's police chief, a Cintron. He's involved with people with sound view, involved with identity thefts and frauds with the intelligence community that are as one's criminally foreign influenced. People associated with Jonathan Mayano and involved with sequence shifts, identity thefts, and frauds, and with people that were in my grade, and then I stayed back my senior year. Also, they were recorded various courts personally involved with multi-front. People were pretending people that weren't even in my class, and all exceptions behind my back were pretending things relevant to where and how they were making fact treatments. Like, for example, I never had a conversation personal with either of two speech teacher classes I had. And other might have been pretended or is pretended into the database, but either way, there were the detectives involved, one with a family that used to live or still does live a street over from me. Also involved with like a Jamie Smith and a David Smith, involved with a guy I don't know the name of, but he's recorded involved with some doctors, involved on my street 3 times with Hartford Hospital. They've been using means for the interbranch to force mental evaluations to hide what I caught them doing, intercampuses, intercities through time and uses of it, but also juxtaposed with other uses of it by the breaching method. So, for example, my audience, YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, everyone's audience, we want and need, to be able to report sequence shifts, to be able to report and demonstrate that which is actually recorded. So, in other words, Ron Adams, in other words, it has nothing to do with what I was saying about the bagel. I didn't want to leave that out because I don't know the names of all the people involved with that. It's a method where they make people make confessions where between through kids that don't even know each other, and they're making kids. They're lying about the nature of the relationships between the kids. I caught them with digital uses of the pictures and various natures of things. These are people that are pretending to be against things they are for, with their defenses of the other their colleagues and whatever like that. They have types of investigators. They have types of problems that are being and having been employed. Roles used to keep how they exploit the simultaneous nature and how they need to hide that. So relevant to that, roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders, relevant to where their motivations, for example, can be triangulated, right? And uses of their confessions, because uses of self-value, criminal and citizen's natures. So there is medical corruption associated with the physical delusions juxtaposed with the interbranch originally instilled. So they have a nature that is incapable of defending itself and of affording people calm needs and means to demonstrate where and how all locations the law was prevented originally instilled. That's what American history is about. It has to be told through the filter that never was broken through. Part of the reason it wasn't broken through because what was consciously maintaining other in place of the short words and revelations are it had the sophistication to interpret before we did that which our founders left us to discern. So what is hyper-evidential when they make treatments of founding parents that we don't even have to have read about. We could discern criminally foreign influenced uses of their identities, and that having been at the time too, they have all leaders forced to self-value roles with locations, areas, and states, criminally foreign influence, positive treatments and negative treatments, and collusion relative to the hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise that we must conceive ourselves as fact-cheap in nature, capable of countering. Countries A through Z, we have a shared enemy. And so it is easier to discern how people are pretending passions and emotions regarding the names associated with the history of the past and regarding the what they claim to be revelations, what they claim to be capable and honest logic, or positive / negative / identity treatment, and or negative, positive / identity / negative, and simultaneously negative / positive. I mean, negative / identity / positive. How the Trinity is bound. I'll gather round, discern. The earth is round. And by what's more profound than it, while it has its stay, there many pray, vaccines, to teach us things. So there is identity. There are people. There is a Czech Casper. I never had a class with him in my life. And there are people on Facebook and or on YouTube that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There's a Thomas Potter, and our people associated with a Mr. Potter, and with also Mike Pandolf and his brothers and family, with identity thefts and frauds against me behind my back, and with people all the way where they tried to set up exception nature, vaccines to teach us things that timeless taught, and by forever greater still than what is timeless. Oh, as yet earth's value here, or least of IDs, behold, it is forced away. It goes. That value, hyper invisible, but still discernible where and how all parts of our identity of sequence / simultaneous nature are actually manifest. I tell it best vaccines to teach us things. For this to know, sometimes the rain will fall from skies, sometimes it will snow. Boxing is all at once while to and fro. The writer bent over isn't involved with me, even though they keep saying he is. Bent over. That's fine. I don't know what to tell you, Ron. Tactical. So in other words, people offensively attach people to fake words and offensively pretend they didn't and don't understand people as means to prevent people from reporting sequence shifts, interbranch, forging names, switching names roles, uses of that roles, including lawyers with roles fabricating audio and video at locations, and with wire crimes, and with juxtaposing fake motivations like their roles with ad placements, a Trantolo and Trantolo, involved with medical racketeering, but it's also a judicial branch locations racketeering. It is also on off the other places involved with wire crimes with them, and methods pretending people to fabricate audio and video, making things up. I never seen it. We don't even live in the same town. Boxing is found. So Weathersfield and Branch had people that behind my back painted themselves into corners. And because this is how they use the sense and sensibilities of strangers motivated to need to pretend. The exceptions when they saw people real quick we're coupled with something more than that. And that's where and how it's relevant to where and how the overt criminal enterprises and private ones have been colluding, for example, with all kinds of things relevant to and manifest with fact, cheap, and nature qualities regarding unions and regarding their identity ground locations and their names. No, if you're corrupt with locations that individuals A through Z, and that's with one act that then they have to hide from nature with the whole more and more they have to use people defending the identities like of UPS, not like not even realizing they're defending people that are cramming down their own union money, stealing their own union money, rules stealing their health from off those locations, further on off the locations, but further motivations, nature needs other too, because people's motivations, as actually recorded, other than what is juxtaposed with by the breaching method, is also evidence. See, but we have to be able to use what is hyper-evidential. So there are people at schools in Wethersfield and involved with the intelligence community with buildings next to Hartford Hospital, next to the state of Connecticut, the capital at Hartford, Connecticut, and downtown Hartford. These are also people involved with New Haven FBI, and retired and standing interbranch family members, military, etc., involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, offensive uses of criminally foreign influence database relationships, database relativity, since before computers. This method our founders left us to demonstrate complete remote possession over the quality /IES of what you hear speaking to you, sickly distinctly through MSNBC, sickly distinctly through Fox News, sickly distinctly through CNN, to keep how sickly not distinctly from being discerned, to keep it roles with that self-value from being discerned. So the only way we could discern it is to have mandated law properly followed outside of court. So they have to allow sequence shifts to be told on. They have to allow falsified police reports to be responded to. They say they put charges with no writing. They have all kinds of methods and ways they prevented mandated law and used immunities from prosecutions where they didn't have immunity, exploiting exceptions originally and still. The breaching method knew that those identities of sophistication / non-sophistication would do. But, only capable of being remotely used since they were kids. How they were motivated to is recorded. And how they have along Route 3 has something to do with the kids with the bagel I was trying to tell you about, Ron, and with the identity thefts and frauds from other classrooms, with people involved on my street and tied to them with Wethersfield police recorded, like switching names, forcing them to roles with identity thefts and frauds and slanders, as like this Dillon family involved with more people on the child defender registry since before they got caught, involved with the ones with off campus. I caught them with more on that same campus, and they have uses of the daughter of a principal when I was there, involved with everyone speaking to us too. I never had a personal conversation with her. I barely know her. The hyper-simultaneous fact-cheating nature of the breaching method has been exploited for, I'm reading your thing, Ron Adams, for multi-channel signal processing by systematically extending the previous analysis of. For the multi-path case, it is possible to use the contour. I don't know what you're talking about, Ron Adams, but what people associated with Wethersfield Police and Hartford courts and the Britain Superior Court and Middletown courts and exceptions tied to them. They on Facebook recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with spreading lies with the Wethersfield Police and other police departments on Facebook, and their uses of the kids' Facebook pages has something to do with their roles with predicate acts recorded on and off Trinity College. So an ILO family said that the father of an ILO confirmed, confessed, demonstrated, recorded, has roles with people with an Oliveri families, with both streets paralleling Trinity College, involved with child abuse, identity theft, frauds, and slanders. They have also other natures of organized crime roles with that, and falsified police reports roles, where and how the agencies and the police forms have been with the military too. There are military police switching and forging names and roles of identity theft, fraud, slanders on Trinity College with the Joshua Stryker too, who's involved with the Joshua Julian, also spreading lies with people with forensic locations with the same house tied to the people on those campuses involved with predicate acts with this Joshua Stryker. So for multipath case, it is possible to use the contour. What is contour integration? Contour integration, you mean with computers? So Ron, we have some real morons speaking for the law, and they're valuing exception nature to pretend other. They've been using police equipment per a Leahy family that pretended to have conversations with me. They pretended I had conversations with them about legal cases and about my family. And they pretended as people involved personally with co-defendants and their family members, with people that went to my schools, and the daughter of one involved with these locations on the street they involved. So they recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed that path. And this was also in one of the CNN articles, stories where they have on-off Paul Manafort Drive and Central Connecticut State University in New Britain. There's a route from Wethersfield to New Britain that has roles with the identity theft, frauds, instances that show what I caught them doing with the police phones and their roles with identity theft, fraud. They've been putting fake things in databases, fake conversations with their officers that forged and switched names because they painted themselves in corners. When I was a kid, they would infect strangers to make confessions to me, which are also simultaneously confessions and demonstration about their roles with other strangers. And then they would then it would become relevant because they would want me to talk to them. I didn't talk to them. They would lie about how people are not communicating, why they aren't. And then there were those whole times a whole bunch of juxtaposed natures of organized crime with those kids, as ones also with overt criminal enterprise. Now they're adults that don't even know me, and they're needing to pretend they know me with complete strangers, as ones that only know in context where they can't be honest about because it's the only context, and they were strangers seeking me out to fabricate audio and video, and others. That's relevant to where I caught them on off the kid. They even have the news attaching little kids to fake ties to doctors. It's been a long time that we've had physical delusions with the mental health people tied to the courts, identity thefts and frauds, slanders, fake ties to people from those locations, further and further self-valued roles. With that being having been through time and background, stacking fake things in databases and speaking lies about that has something to do with their uses. I was thinking of making a shirt. I don't think so, because I need, if you want to help me, if you help me get a name who disbelieves anything I've said and regarding the sequence shifts and the confessions with the interbranch cliques with a whole bunch of people from the Britain Superior Court from my town. Nothing personal against them too. They need to pretend it's personal. They prevent people free speech, and they make up. They attach people to fake words and their family members. They attach people to fake pleadings and cases. At the lower courts are still criminally foreign influenced with everything else, other natures of it, and with uses of that at campuses through time. And they have collusion /s with the policings of the campuses, how that is all being actually and having been manifest. So there's an Eric Mendez, I don't know. He was influenced when he was a little kid to pretend other and to pretend so they could film exceptions and to pretend, in other words, and they even replaced someone else with him so they could pretend exceptions that weren't even real. I have nothing to do with Eric Mendez when he was growing up, and or nor with his brother, who I only know through others. And he walked by one time and smiled. And, you know, when I was in high school, and they make those, when I say others, I don't know who those others were either. They time that. So there are fact-cheaping nature phenomena associated with that, where they're involved with the identity theft, fraud, slander method. And so they would force teachers and leaders of the school to ask kids questions about instances that happen on school campuses and off campuses, and they're leaving out exception nature, and they're telling them to ask about it dishonestly. They're painting arrays, and they have painted arrays. The people that there's a girl who the boys and girls who were involved with making the yearbook are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed without realizing how they had been child abused as kids and made to self-value roles with it, where they're involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, specifically also as roles with wire crimes, uses of methods, roles with it, and falsified police reports and news reports that are in collusion with people that have been slandering people and stuff at all locations. That slander is relevant to where and how nature is as a conjunction to our syntax nature. This is hyper-linguistics. This is linguistics / hyperlinguistics with honesty and with integrity of science. See, science is supposed to use a scientific process, not theories juxtaposed offensively affront to what is capable of being revealed by honest uses of scientific process. Did Eric Mendez take his own life? If not, why isn't he with his family now? What has been hiding? And can Mendez's family face his wife and daughter knowing what they really did? I don't know Eric Mendez. He's one of the police with New Britain Superior Court and with Wethersfield Police with his brother, also on off Fox Connecticut News and the spots downtown Hartford, and with people on Two Route Highway involved with identity thefts and frauds, various natures of abuses of kids, including drugs and medicines crimes with kids, with the identity thefts and frauds rolls through time, as people involved with the employments at campuses, intercities, connected, where they have their sense and sensibilities relevant to where and how, you know, improper treatments by the aspects of English grammar and of languages have been self-value defended too. The sciences have been defended, abridged, individually grouped and together. The Constitution was supposed to be got and stay unabridged. Correlation natures means one way redeems. I don't know Mendez. So these are pleas. Eric Mendez and a Domain family is also ones on off the Fox Connecticut News, on off other in Hartford, involved on off the Wethersfield Police Department, and child campuses involved with crimes also that are fact-cheaping nature oriented, evidence planting, identity thefts and frauds roles with religious locations. So they have religious nut bags and roles with the low locations, formerly nutbags and good people at the same time. But there are sensibilities where they make lies about other people, would they actually try to report. They're preventing sequence shifts and the value of that from being told on. vaccines, and it tells me tactical. See, there is tactical, but there was also hyper-tactical. They're bound and they're distinct. See, they are needing to hide about their motivations and natures and needs and interests. For example, where and how they lied to their girlfriends growing up about others and pretend that's their motivations when they were roles with overt criminal enterprises, with falsified police reports, with other locations where they were using roles with that, where they're exploiting exceptions and exception nature with the law, where police forms and overt criminal enterprises and private ones exploit exceptions where they have the quote white right to lie unquote, but where and how they exploit exceptions. So they were used criminally foreign influence. There's a pseudo sophistication associated with and as the value of the FBI that is discernible relative to treatments of formal and responses of treatments of and non-responsive of treatments regarding black and white. And regarding the Constitution unabridged, torture is additional to slavery. The identity theft, fraud, slander is additional to slavery. And it is how sickly, distinctly against everyone, even our founding parents. In our faces, they steal their identities. Could you break down the difference between tactical and hyper-tactical? I was trying to explain it to one of my friends yesterday, but I could not. Yes, in other words, there were a whole bunch of motivations for people that were tactical. That were tactical need to pretend they're good anyway, needing to pretend that they're evil when there were rules with slavery, jobs and titles, identities, identity grounds, voices. As criminal insidious natures and qualities that couldn't defend that and apply themselves or any subject to identity as it actually is. So we have a bunch of slandering interbranch and as victims only capable of being because they have overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and that insidiousness of everyone hearing things and speaking things through others. So hyperjournalism, for example, is distinct from journalism, which is known with fake news and relative to where and how they fight with each other for audiences. But they're supposed to be fighting about as scientific process. They were supposed to be licensed so they would have integrity. To be able to, if someone follow mandated law, not be coached on how to pretend they were following law, mandated law, but not be, because there are collusions with the retired and standing interbranch. Ancient gaming system. Hello to you guys. People and ladies. So in Rocky Hill, there's the corner of Rocky Hill, of Route 3, and of Elm Street. There are people associated with the Oliveri family, and there are people associated with the Colal family, or the Colal name too, because the Colal name was brought up about like 10 months ago by Wethersfield police who made confessions, sought me out on the phone to make confessions. They've been seeking me out to make confessions about their role switching names. And with the Wethersfield Police Chief Cintron involved with it. It's also people from Puerto Rico with the name Cintron and people from other countries involved with police that have something to do with, they confess, recorded, demonstrated on Facebook. They have people, men and women that raised or had influence roles with Mike Roberts, who's involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, also with the names brought up. A whole bunch of people on Trinity College and CCSU were timed roles with predicate acts on my street and on Facebook as ones that was involved with the houses brought up by the confessions of the Wethersfield police involving the town offices through time. And then 10 months ago, and right before the pandemic, the recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed involved planting evidences through time also on all sides of my house, and per their uses of the sense and sensibilities of the neighbors of people criminally. And they left this out where and how they were supposed to reveal what they were involved with criminally, as real estate agents, as Anna Dillon, involved with a Kevin Dillon, and some guy I don't know his name who made confessions into my speech, one of the speech classes I had, who was involved with houses next to the state prison offices and families also next to the state judicial branch offices, which is right near Route 3, paralleling it in the street near it. And this is relevant to where and how these are people involved with natures of organized crime bound at the locations where the witch trials are. And right around the corner from where George Washington had to counter extort people to leave slavery entrenched. But to counter it, but first having to leave it entrenched, right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War. And see other pretended value is simultaneously hyper-evidential, for example. The ancient gaming system is also known as the human science chess. It is shown in January. I've never heard of that. I had ancientgamingsystem.com, but there's confusion with that still because the FBI and some state police and other police departments with the Wethersfield police and police also with the judicial branch and even private police associated and lawyers of them are involved fabricating audio and video together. I caught them doing this inter-campuses through time. They have people on the school board that pretended to know me, and they take a picture of me walking by. I never have a conversation with them. They're pretending sensibility. This is interstates manifest, intercities. They have to hide life aggressions in parallel to what is worse than just interstates and internationally criminally foreign influence, relative to where and how the differentially criminally foreign influence part, but increasingly is relevant, where and how the interbranch are. So I wanted to need to use this with art where I'm making movies and cartoons and things like that. But before I could do that, they're preventing people from doing business offensively. We have to address how the identity theft, fraud, slanders roles has complete remote possession of forced self-value roles with the types of industries. And how they get away with it is relevant to where and how they pretend passions and emotions regarding people's uses of names like Hitler, for example, and where and how they have the stewards of various religions in collusion that way. They're pretending there are sides where there are none. No, to prevent where there are none and where there are actually bound sides from being spoken about. So these are also people with the corners of the streets on Route 3 that are involved with identity thefts and frauds, clicks on and off the state judicial branch offices, and with military families that lied to their girlfriends and their wives relative to people involved those life progressions from when I went to that campus, and where they have juxtaposed natures of organized crime and uses of them, distinct natures of child abuses and uses of responses to that, where they separate types of things specifically to keep collusion with all those things. And a method I caught them using. Not just people are not just that stupid on purpose, where and how they prevent abuses most overt against humanity when they make opinions about what they think about positive or negative, or like black and white uses. These are people involved with identity thefts and frauds with interbranch family members that are black and ones that are involved with KKK themed, Confederate flag themed, and sexual circles where they have to pretend their motivations, natures, needs, interests, because their roles also with child abuses of juxtaposed natures with private campuses and with public schools where they're involved, where they're mixing the kids, where they have the phenomenon of the interbranch, they're going to go on to be database tied identities and are grouped, and they're all an array that are already identities that have fraud, slanders, not even realized too, because they attach everyone to fake words. So we have to use other people's names for how they bring up other people's names behind our backs. We won't even know them. And then, in other words, I still haven't got responded to by the campus yet. So these Mendez police are involved further with a Phil Cololo and with other people involved with the principal child abusers campus, other campuses in Wethersfield and intercities, and with how with Central Connecticut State University and Trinity College having been collusion with people fabricating audio and video and being coached to roles with it by my town's police chief 1 year ago, involved with the same house and one's tied to them. Also, you could see that from another sequence nature because it's also another house, a Smith house, that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, true, their roles since they were kids. Child abuse and then uses of it later for their roles with the Wethersfield police with untimely deaths and with some ecstasy pills and other natures of organized crime they have with families that involved also with the policing of stores and with unions, positions, all those narratives with that. There are kept uses of the ground locations in collusion with uses of the locations by that fact-checking nature-oriented breaching method since before our foundings parents were born entrenched here. What is the screen? Ron, we need to get these people's names. We need to get someone on paper. What are you talking about? Mendez died. A Mendez police officer died? Because 2 Mendez police officers are involved also with some such that reported tied to other murders, including of the deaths of police officers. And as people involved with this, with the child abusers, overtly / simultaneously. We have further leaders of the kids in their positions that were being and are being and haven't been influenced to hide what is actually recorded by fabricating audio and video transcripts. That's what the leaders of the kids are involved with. To counter this, we must counter the interbranch roles with it. We got them cold if one person gets me a name. Because those Mendez police, since they were kids, forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded to roles with the stewards of their programs with their kids. And an officer who was reported by his family to be an officer, Joe DeMoro. I don't know, there's other Joe DeMoros in his family, also criminally foreign influence with the police since they were kids. Roles with falsified police reports, evidence reception racketeering, identity reception racketeering, sequence shifts. Joe DeMoro sought me out every once in a while, make confessions regarding his roles with a former Mayor Gold's campus and with Tim O'Brien, Andrew O'Brien, with executive police firms involved. Also, found out with judicial families, with identity thefts and frauds, also with foreign and domestic, a whole bunch of foreign and domestic families and natures of organized crime they are involved with, where they use the right to lie, where they don't, including it is hyper-recorded, where they are involved with drugs and medicines crimes with the kids, attaching the kids to fake ties to doctors, fake ties to mental diagnosis, fake communications and locations with doctors and strangers, and with the news media involved with this. He goes by the username Magneto, all lowercase. His name is on the list. So there is a Mr. Kerr, Jerry Kerr, who's one of the ones who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by the kids, was and by himself through other more motivations, nature's needs, answers, confessions. As a stranger, he's involved with, when I was in middle school, he made some confessions to me with his kids. And now he's one of the ones brought up by an officer, Jerry Miller, who's involved with the north side of my house with various natures of federal crimes. And then with as people involved with the families on the other side, all sides of my house, and relevant to where and how they use the sense and sensibilities of everyone around everyone, where we have interbranch corruption that is multi-front with the news too. All exception and exception nature are in demonstration of the same thing, because one can't record the police in court. I should, even though they say we could in these instances, I made sure by having them record themselves. One of your messages is held for review, it says. So also there's a certain kind of like gay person. See what you say? I like boobies, Ron Adam. Where and how like this Mike Kerr and the Joe DeMora, they had a sexual intimacy with their confessions together. And then other pretended, because they shared a girl, and then they were pretending they didn't like it at the same time, because they have complete possession. They were telling lies to girls. They were slandering other people, and they were sequence shifting. They were getting people to identity ground locations uses. Like there's a Christopher Cullen who went out of his way to pretend to know me, also, as people involved with predicate acts with kids of various natures, of police families involved with identity theft, frauds, falsified police reports, drugs and medicines crimes with the kids, various natures of child abuse, also as families involved with remote uses of the elderly homes and locations next to them. It also has something to do, they have connections to uses of the 3 spots at the end of the Burlington Turnpike and the spots next to them, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and with these people with the interbranch, forging and switching names, preventing writing. So I don't know Eric Klotz. He went out of his way to make an exception when I was a kid, and then when I was an adult, tied to the corner of Church of Fairlane Drive and Griswold Street, and he brought up Central Connecticut State University in New Britain being involved with it. People from Wethersfield who have roles with Central Connecticut State University since I was a kid, they have roles with various natures of federal crimes with the kids, with the police firms where they have the rights to do that, but they use it where they don't have the rights to do it. One of the things it is commonly, because their roles also sickly distinctly on Hartford campuses and with the spots next to it manifest, with names involved, criminally foreign influence. There was a I never met her. There was a Dr. Laura Saunders involved with some people with Wethersfield with houses and locations next to Wethersfield campuses, further involved with doctors. I only know who made confessions to me and statements to me, like a Dr. Graham, who's involved with a principal child abuser before he got caught, and with a Bob Chase, who also has a Phil Cololo, who is one of the ones involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me, as one of the extended family members of the Ray Cololo with the intelligence community, and all exceptions tied to the interbranch. There is even Navy involved criminally. There are and other military, Marines, and you can't get them to respond on Facebook because there is no position that's not a fake, compromised position with our branches of government, with all those things, because they have fake integrity. They have complete possession over the sense and sensibilities of all having been roles with the short words and the revelations of our founding parents, having been forbid, their protraction and their hyper-evidential relevance to that which we speak and opine and / convict. See, when someone's making opinions, they're holding on to premises treatments, those premises treatments, they have used stuff like isms here and there, like in Russia, communism, socialism, capitalism. They have used those isms effectively to maintain pseudo sophistication, pseudo difference in the furtherance of that breaching method roles, boxings to souls. So, with the transition from Organized Crime to Control Act to the Racketeering, Influence, and Corrupt Organization Act, there was, and since founding, our agencies and their original equivalents, they have been criminally foreign influenced while trying to stop that. They have been furthering it, though. So, in other words, worse than criminal incompetence spoke for and as the law relative to where and how other took the place of the short words and revelations actually capable of our correlation nature per what caused slavery, per what the Constitution unabridged means. So I don't know these people from my grammar school. All exceptions, they invested people, and it's nothing personal against them. Hard as they might try to make it, I didn't care then and now. I didn't even know my neighbor had who his friends were. I didn't even try to think about it. I didn't know where they were hanging out. Those locations got involved in this. I found out about it that way. Obama, what? See, people pretend people are sensitive because they're preventing people the means to calmly calmly defend ourselves from identity thefts, frauds, and slanders. We have complete fakes involved with investigations. Investigators themselves used remotely at all locations. So people have only seen this because since they were kids, there's this method involved with the identity theft, fraud, slanders. That's relevant to where they have CRT treatments and uses of it. Critical race theory. They have theory involved with that. See, one of the things that people do is pretend that others are speaking about theory, where and how they pretend that they're perceiving people to be making allegations, where and how they are in the furtherance of with the illusions that people are telling you on, because they already were in the furtherance of illusions relevant. It's a singular method to all locations that America's history and sciences are actually about. So boxing, martial arts, and wrestling are about where and how criminal insidious nature is in hands of overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the interbranch, increasingly together in collusion, differentially increasingly relevant to all instances, reaction roles. They can't react to an instance properly and defend what they've already defended, their fact treatments, so they cannot afford mandated law to lead. So they need to value means to get away with pretending other, because they have these people involved with all formal evidence reception, data reception, informal, and collusion with it. So, in other words, there's something to do with where and how they have people, like with the yearbooks, where they lie to them as their roles recorded, forced, self-valued with falsified police reports, identity theft, fraud, slanders, also that were multi-front with the news media. See, there's a Joshua Julian who was involved, who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He doesn't understand the extent of it, but his lies and delusions and his roles with men and women since he was a kid, involved with identity thefts and frauds, intercampuses of each age and nature connected. They're keeping the kids needing to hide life progressions and needing to leave out things with their sense and sensibilities for how they have the they have roles with it, exploiting it. Where the in other words, They have complete possession over the perception of little girls and over the perception of little boys, sickly distinctly, to keep all sickly non distinctly from being discerned. Now, these are also roles simultaneously with exploitations of the elderly campuses, per through how jobs and things like that got involved, actually. And then juxtaposed with other parent motivations, nature's interests. So if they want to debate their motivations, it's not even relevant. The only thing that's relevant is what is actually recorded. People sought me and others out when we were kids to pretend they know us, and there's connections between that. So they can't go back and be honest about history. As styles, they can't be honest about actual American history. So everyone has to value roles with the science is abridged. This is what I was talking about with the bagels before. What were you speaking about? You're speaking about boobies. I'm speaking about child abuse. You're speaking about boobies. You have some fake kids that had, in other words, to feel like a man. They're just glad they had a girl. They don't care how that was only affect. That wouldn't even, in other words, in other words, they've been using police equipment roles with hiding live progressions, timing where people are going to walk, so they could then have responses to asked about, and they share arrays of blaming other things, others, or ourselves for that which was the relevance of their families and people tied to them with overt criminal enterprises involved, private ones, in the interbranch, where how they have been used remotely, criminally for influence since they were kids. So an O'Brien family that I never had a class with, and Debbie Gold, a mayor I never had I don't know if she was in my class. One time I played dreidel with her, and we had no problems, which was real quick. In other words, that's all. And then she was pretending other things at the databases with medical families have been doing this. There's a Kevin Harris who's also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed, involved his girlfriend, who was reportedly the daughter of the guy who was the principal when I was there, Mr. Murphy, involved her with various natures of federal crimes with some prosecutors and their kids, and with some judges and their kids and extended families involved with the identity thefts and frauds, and with the uses of the ground locations distinctly, including the interbranch locations. The Britain Superior Court and Hartford courts has rules with various natures of federal crimes against little kids, including how women roles with child abusers. There are women judges involved with officers forging and switching names on falsified police reports and then leaving chaos and just fake things in the databases, nothing to respond to. So the kids made confessions about a Lance Cuddy. I never had a class with Lance Cuddy. I never saw Lance Cuddy on a campus in my life. One time I saw him, never had a conversation with him at a house next to the state prison offices. Walked by him. That's also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. His roles with men and women that were involved with, knowingly or even if it's unknowingly, with the instances there, the timing of it. I also saw him, the only other time I ever saw him, besides in a picture, I think in the yearbook, but was on Park Street. There's Alina's Cafe. There's Alina's Pizza, who's also involved with identity thefts and fraud. Lance Cuddy's name was brought up to people brought up by people with confessions when I was in 6th grade. I didn't know who he was. Relevant to the confessions they would affect, where a former Mayor Gold's and his family and his kids, and Dennis O'Brien, and his wife and his kids and their extended family members, and doctors like Brendan Leahy. I didn't know his name then. I don't know who. I didn't even know him then. But there's a Brendan Leahy and other people who've been fabricating audio and video into databases, even using tricks to get the kids to take roles with it, especially regarding the relevance of the overt, worse than criminal competence, relevant when people try to use what is hyper-evidential. Then you find people self-valuing how the name of, what's his name, the doctor, the guy, Einstein. Oh, you know more than Einstein. Einstein has a theory of relativity offensively affront to that which is the identity of relativity. The relativity of the hyper-simultaneous, for example, and to define that hyper-simultaneous that is positive also onto itself, where and how the individual volume, the grouped volume, and the species identity of volume /s are bound. All gather round, boxings. I teach you things, but long. So in countries A through Z, the breaching method that came from semi-ancient times, knew people would blame other things, others and or selves for the real cause of negative value, nature, progressions, acts, and natures. And it could get them, they would defend simultaneously, they would be defending premises treatments, fact treatment nature treatments, fact treatment nature aspects like qualities, fact treatment nature qualities increasingly as criminal insidiousness natures, increasingly self-value, where and how they would have to respond for and as our nature unabridged no longer provided means at one location. No matter if you're the most powerful leader of the world, you can only be above locations, area, and around locations, areas, and states, and law. Locations, areas, states, the entire species are the identity of pseudo sophistications, bound, self-valued, how bound. So none could see through that to really how bound further. So there's just maintenance to where and how we are bound tactical other, because there is a function. There are functions, plural, by the one function of us being defended, tactical ulterior, from the value progression sister as native pure. No criminal foreign influences like the rest of space nature. So the interbranch has roles also with the medical community, lying about the nature of relationships between little kids, needing to attach them more and more strangers to fake locations, and that increasingly being relevant to fact treatments. So people at Trinity College and CCSU have roles with the FBI and with a whole bunch of other countries, like Afghanistan, involved with what they said also is roles with there's a Kerr family, there's a DeMorrow family, and there's a Cololo family who have on Elm Street in Rocky Hill since I was a kid, roles with people with the campuses, fabricating audio and video with investigators, identity thefts, fraud, slanders with them, wire crimes roles with them, falsified police reports roles with them, roles with lawyers also multi-front, fabricating audio and video that is being and having been used to replace actual audio and video. So they have something to do with Rocky Hill being and having been used remotely, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously from people in Wethersfield who weren't even in my classes in grammar school. And they all exception nature, they influenced the kid to pretend other. And they would tell you that if you ask them, but you have to, unless you ask them the wrong way. It's part of the Pixar iceberg. They make animated movies with foreign influences that have subliminal message hidden in them for brainwashing. So I don't know about that, Ron. They have the lodge. They have roles with everybody that are reliant upon that information that is in databases. that is relevant to the integrity treatments by what it is. For example, we have victims of the Holocaust, what they call the Holocaust. There are proofs that they're calling it that for where and how they keep victims, blaming other things, others and or themselves. The way the breaching method wanted and needs regarding Hitler treatments, regarding the murderous treatments, individually grouped and together regarding with these wars leading up to the Revolutionary War and since. They have still been lying about the Revolutionary War, relevant to needs to get away with it, is relevant to that. They don't have integrity, the people speaking for the law. And they've been lying about, they have something to do with the corner of South Street Highway and Town Line Drive also. With the names, they don't let you know all the names involved too. Like one involved with Mike Pandolf, who's also one of the ones who confessed, demonstrated, confirmed he was influenced to go out of his way to pretend to know me and to paint arrays of his roles with depositions and things like that. Also with the Kerr family, and with also with a Yagman family, with the Kerr family, through people at the corner of Town Line Drive and South Steen Highway. They have something to do with that, and the people along Route 3 and on off Elm Street, where they keep saying they have the right to lie, or communicating the equivalent of that. In other words, and with their roles, they've been doing this on Facebook, as the people involved also with New Britain Superior Court's Facebook page, with the principal child abusers, and with predicate acts and sexual abuses of young women and little girls at Central Connecticut State University, as the ones now as a woman together in collusion with the principal child abusers campus and with other campuses, with the police forms involved with that. So there are some sexual circles with the police forms. There's an officer Poison, who I don't know what he looks like, but he's also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, one of the ones involved with digital crimes, with upskirt nature principle, and various natures of doctors and their cliques with the various courts, personally, criminally involved, and with these identity thefts and frauds, and with the uses of that word bagel. So there's a Debbie Gold who was pretending passions and emotions regarding the word bagel, and her roles with Chet Casper, with people with identity thefts and frauds from other classrooms, and with their family members, also with overt criminal enterprises and private ones through time involved with the narratives and names involved on the streets. They also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed it has something to do with their uses of corners of streets, where they have to hide libations in the future here by timing when we're going to be walking by the corners of the streets, and by the uses of the names associated with those houses, and with the transitions from the houses to new owners, and the uses of their extended family members. They exploited the daughter of a recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. People involved with falsified police reports against me when I was a kid were involved with abuses of identity thefts and frauds roles with falsified police reports that were relevant to the abuses of the granddaughter, reportedly, of the house at the corner of, and also people associated with locations next to, and as the value treatments by the fact treatment agent roles, uses of the post office in Wethersfield, also with a Dr. Graham, with unnamed judges. I don't know their names yet. There are judges involved with the campuses in Wethersfield, further involved with sexual and medical abuses, and with physical delusions, and with evidences crimes, uses at their own locations and as the campuses, how they've been used. These are also roles recorded, remote uses of the sensibilities of private school kids and of grammar school and of public school kids, and of the mix too, with their roles with uses of the locations where they have life progressions through additional motivations now on each of the campuses. So we have more leaders of the kids with Wethersfield involved, further having been fabricating audio and video to replace with actually recorded audio and video, Make sure I get the police. They have the lawyers of the FBI for criminally involved too. So make sure the town offices, excuse me. Okay, so thank you, everybody. Have a great day. And many pray. Make sure I get a name. Who disbelieves? Make sure someone gets a name. Respond. Anyone who pretends to know me, make sure you give me a name of and pretend you like me or dislike me, because if someone's, I'm gonna show you that I'm not lying. You guys also hid this from a judge Napolitano, and they have also people with overtly gay cliques involved with these with like swingers, or with people who have sex with women at the same time with themselves. I don't know if they have anal sex with themselves, but they have those kind of relationships. And it has something to do with their involvement with a Mike Roberts, who I never went to. It wasn't a real party. They were trying to. I went there real fast, and they were involved with identity thefts and frauds. Also with Jennifer Kenneth Pickey, and they said it has something to do with a Cololo family, with a whole bunch of people tied to Tim O'Brien, with the corners of the streets on Hangdog Lane and on other streets that are involved. Then with people from my middle school, this Joe DeMauro and his brother John DeMauro, and there's a Mike Kerr, and there's his brother Jerry Kerr. The John DeMauro and the Jerry Kerr have roles with the police families of shopping centers, and this is relevant to where they have remote control uses of the sensibilities of the agencies and of various courts and their family members involved with significance of that, where they have foreign and domestic need to highlight progressions at campuses, and even preemptively shown needs to. So they have roles with falsified police reports and all kinds of natures and crimes that way, like with wire crimes, with some probate judges associated with a Delafair family, also with fire departments. And there's an Inspector Mike. And so there's people with the name KNERR when I was a kid and through time involved. Also, there's a KERR with a KNERR accounts associated with Facebook page of New Britain Superior Court, involved with Facebook, with falsified police reports, uses of the interbranch, all exceptions tied to them, to force, trick, hurt, persuade, child abuses, and while simultaneously pretending other. How that is motivated and what has been motivated is recorded involved. And they said it has something to do with Chet Casper and Bagels and a Debbie Gold, her stacking through time every year roles of more data and evidence reception crimes that are databases oriented, and also at locations. They've been roles with identity thefts, fraud, slanders. Has something to do with people with the Wethersfield Parks. They're trying to make me be mean to people like Rick Sam Faglione and or a Carone, Mark Carone, Kevin Carone, and Jamie Carone. And so because they need to lie because they were involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, with police firms involved with them, with the corner too there of Solstein and Town Line Drive. Now, see, these are people involved with Central Connecticut State University with identity thefts and frauds, and their roles with class placements, putting people next to me that have roles with predicate acts on campuses and off campuses of others. And so they're just roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders, sequence shifts, and roles with attaching me to fake locations, fake ties to themselves, fake natures of ties to themselves, fake ties to the girls and the other boyfriends that they shared their girls with at the same time, per their confessions, where they do that, where that's one of the things that's being communicated. When they in other words, they have people with Millwoods Park in the past who pretended to know me that way. And that, in other words, they know that's what's actually recorded, but they had to pretend I knew them from locations before that. They were lying about what came before that when they just take pictures of things. The FBI has been recorded with other agencies and branches of government since founding, offensive data reception, racketeering natures worse than war crimes, a little identity theft, fraud, slanders, clicks. So these are also people who confessed on Facebook with different pages. They have identity thefts and frauds with the Wethersfield police rolls, with all these natures of people that make fake Facebook pages, pretending to be me, pretending to be my family. They also, the news media attached me and my family to fake words with themselves and fake pleading in cases and lied about how they won. My father won an NLRB case, National Labor Relations Board case. And it was involved with various natures of since proven federal criminals and overt criminal enterprises and private ones that have family members that were involved at the time when they were still uncharged. Also with telling lies and illusions that were being paralleled with, used in collaboration with people who time when you walk around the corner, they make a statement to you. So then in the future, strangers that you don't know the names of and ones that you do know the names of, you have to use their names. And you either don't know their names, or when you use their names, it makes it look like you knew them how you didn't. They recorded themselves involved with wire crimes, with drugs and medicines crimes, and identity thefts and frauds, and confessions uses with a John DeMorrow and with a Joe DeMorrow, and with his cousins with the same name, and intercities involved with Mike Kerr and Joe DeMorrow that shared a Heather Hansen, and they forced her to collusion with wire crimes, mail crimes, other natures of crimes, also associated with the corner of Elm Street and Walker Hill, and with the corner of, Wells Road in Rocky Hill, rather. Wethersfield, Wells Road in Elm Street. Wells Road and Walker Hill, and with the corner of Wells Road and Southstein Highway, and with the corner of Main Street in Old Wethersfield and Church Street and houses near there. They involved with this, with identity theft, fraud, slanders. Joe DeMorrow sought me out with my neighbor to confess, record, demonstrate, confirm that people associated with the shopping center and with our managers of the shopping center and people associated with the policing with the shopping center have things to do with this. And with like on Town Line Drive, and at the corner of Town Line Drive and Southstein Highway, they have where they used to drive their bikes. They make a few exceptions. I was near them, and then they pretend to know you. They're involved. Like, these were people that used to communicate with each other on the phones. I don't know them. The only time I know them calling me up to make confessions. Then they would make exceptions. So in other words, so these people have roles with undercover police forms associated with car dealerships. So Wethersfield police have some car dealerships, also with some police forms, Intercity, Hartford police. People with Hartford Hospital have roles with drug crimes and medicines crimes, with some people associated with Detective Dillon and the Smith family that answers phones for the police through time, with fire departments also involved, and Judge Smith I had to write a complaint about years ago, and various other judges, including female judges, involved with falsifying police reports, spreading lies and slanders, and worse than obfuscating, the sciences for every voice individually grouped together. They're sabotaging people's education. And they've been using everyone speaking through others criminally. They affected confessions to me from people I don't know the names of regarding the uses of a bagel with the federal crime methods that Debbie Gold saw. I only know her seeking out me to demonstrate that after the only normal communications I had with her. So in other words, there are other family members of and persons as mayors who have sense and sensibilities themselves too, where and how we are made aware of their identities, roles with people. they won't let that told on. They hide that and getting value means and needs to get away with that. Juxtaposed as the value of their responses to other, other people's words. And actually, in fact, treatment says they're actually being and having been unfolded. Tactical ulterior from nature's way, your mini prey. So the policing of the schools, they also, I don't know all their names, has also ties to their roles and uses of whatever they have. The houses on off Two-Rod Highway, Hang Dog Lane, involved with identity theft, frauds, instances. Also, they went out of their way to pretend exceptions real fast with people there, and lying about their motivations for that is one of the things that they commonly, non-distinctly did and do. Who are the boy twins? Townline Mobile on J Street. I remember that J Street. I don't remember that name. I remember the name. I remember is that one off of Walk Hill? But Townline Mobile has people that worked for it that confessed to me and my Saudi friend. There's a Tony Tomorrow, and that there are people with the name Joe Tomorrow, and there's a Claudia Scalora, and there are other people with the name Scalora involved with drugs and medicines crimes and medical crimes with locations there. There's also medical locations. There's also a bar there that has police forms involved with it, maybe even an owner. There's a Kerr family. I just found out about this recently. I've been talking about the corruption at that corner for a while. And so that's relevant to where and how before the World Trade Center attack, and then since, and then before, as the same people criminally involved leading up to a 2006 district court case, and since they have had crime acts roles with federal criminals in cases that have been sentenced. They have roles with killers and people next to the body dumping spots with identity theft, frauds, and slanders. They have roles with methods where they affect people to come up to people offensively, and they can be honest about it. And I don't know all the names of it. So, but there's something to do with the confessions when they were on campus come around a corner when they knew where I was going to be regarding the Spados and the Mike Pandolf with the Delaferros and people with the corners on those streets. They connected all the way to Central Connecticut State University in New Britain. There are people along that way that went out of their way for roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders. So long that I recorded could show you how their motivations are also juxtaposed with roles with motivations of a breaching method they don't even realize. That's how they have everyone forced to use other people's names behind our backs. So, in other words, the only one I had tried to call, I had a communication with a girl over the phone. I thought it was weird how they would have conversations like that with each other, and how they would share girls like that and have like sexual circles, and then have balls to pretend to be men by pretending to be, you're reliant upon that you had a girlfriend from your school, and other people didn't. The only reason other people didn't get to meet the other girls is because of the class placements they put me in. They connected people with the interbranch fabricating audio and video with overt criminal enterprises, also confessed, recorded, demonstrated on our campuses, and by one of the fathers of another one of the principals, then and further involved with the sense and sensibilities in the background. People lying about me to her and to the rest of the principals involved intercampuses, intercities, and with Wethersfield further intercampuses and intra-campuses recorded as actually recorded. See, we have some principals that you better respond. Wethersfield, you better make sure I get a response for the past police chief involved with you, hiding and plotting behind these police chiefs. Now, there were also implied and demonstrated that and how the relevance of the corruption of the former director of the FBI, Robert Lusky, his lawyer, Robert Chevery, and is involved also with various natures of federal criminals on and off the Wethersfield town offices involved with remote uses of it, criminally foreign influence, and roles with the programs with the tied to the courts, recorded effectively being used to employ through time. People needed to blame the real cause of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures as illusions relevantly, distinctly, thus non-distinctly, and simultaneously as illusions, needed to blame those and uses of them on other things, others, and or on selves. So predicate acts, criminal insidiousness, and wrongdoing are things that are relative here, but the methods of delivery of that are what we must use to discern the singular method. That singular method is inseparable from each modern history, if told properly, with revelations capable, by short words, actually capable of protracting differentiation through the also recorded simultaneously self-valued criminal insidiousness natures of positive and negative treatments. So they have religious locations involved with they have formal takes on religions, and what they have, for example, religious extremism and religious radicalism conceived criminally as means to keep remote possession of people, delusions wrought and simultaneously criminally foreign influenced as the formal fact human nature stewards of all locations, areas, and states, and further into branch and further into sciences and private database relationships at the same time. They are family members, ages of correlation nature, shown needs and means to hide the same sequence shifts, finite active progressive lies. It means by them increasingly self-valued, prevented free speech while pretending others simultaneously. So we have to have the simultaneous brought up and examined. Two Brook, Fox Hill, the swimming pool on the corner. I don't know where that is. I don't know what you're talking about. But there's the Connecticut News and the people I call with the wire crimes. They have a house near a golf course was it Two Brook? I mean, but it's on a corner street, but it's facing the other street. It's like a real short street too. So they have various natures of organized crime with the confessions tied and demonstrations tied to timed uses of that location and of the Wethersfield Country Club golf course. Per sense and sensibility, the responses to things where everyone hears things, and that's having been used to hide roles. Hiding life progressions by furthering illusions in. So Tony Smith. So I'm nothing personal against Smiths, but there's a Jennifer Smith I never had a verbal conversation with, who was involved with Judge Smith and a whole bunch of people associated with Christopher Cullen, with some police that involved with very juxtaposed uses of federal crime roles with the kids' families and with the overt criminal enterprises and private ones that are involved with our middle school kids and grammar school kids, sickly distinctly, and with our high school kids. They're involved with identity thefts and frauds and slanders. And they use confessions where no one can go back and then tell the truth. If they try to tell the truth, they have other motivations, natures, needs, interests juxtaposed than the real ones that are controlling everyone, because they have their family members criminally involved with juxtaposed natures of organized crime and uses of that. I don't know Christopher Cullen, but for him seeking me out as a stranger to pretend other, the only context I know him in, he was involved with his family members and people associated with them, with federal crimes on my street and on my grammar school and then on my middle school and high school. I never had a class with him. And people involved with sexual circles, like with this Heather Hansen that Joe DeMauro and a Mike Kerr made confessions about. They made confessions about their roles with girls to other people that they're pretending are friends with themselves. They're pretending they're enemies with themselves too, fake, because they're hiding sequence shifts. They're hiding how they had roles planting arrays where the different takes are all roles with evidence racketeering, where they most usually too the people don't even have this is recorded too, and in the depositions confessed by others through time, they make they attach everyone to fake words, so we have to use the other people's names. Then because they're using remote uses of the motivations of people. Oh, but he's using our names. He's holding on to our names. They brought my name up. They're preventing people from countering where they've been fault rules with falsifying police reports, leaving out exceptions in exception nature because they have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes. At the last second, when you go before courts, they're exploiting exception nature where they're supposed to give them the benefit of the doubt. And they've been hiding the exception nature at locations too. So we have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes relevant to where there are all kinds of bad things that have been happening in statistics and per their uses of private campuses and public campuses non-distinctly, but also how distinctly you keep how sickly non-distinctly from being discerned. And so everyone's increasingly valuing that it kept how that has been kept non-discerned, because that's relevant to where and how they're shown means and needs to get away with such, preventing mandated law, for example, which is hyper-evidential. The January 6th committee is hyper-evidentially being used to measure and maintain worse than criminal incompetence regarding the defense of this country, and then further as the District of Columbia, and further as themselves afterwards. Boxes. So there's something to do with the policings of the there's the land behind those roads. Like there's land behind that connects Route 3 to the Berlin Turnpike. That has something to do with the criminally foreign influenced connections between the people with the World Trade Center and Hartford intercities involved with identity thefts and frauds instances, like this Czech Casper and a Spada family involved with this with the men and women judges and prosecutors involved with identity thefts and frauds, and doctors involved in drugs and medicine crime with kids, and their boyfriends, sexual circles where they have a whole bunch of boyfriends that share girls, and they slander other people. They pretend, so it has something to do with. There's a Jennifer. There's a forgot his name. Jim Socha and a Jennifer Socha. I don't know her last name, Jennifer Socha. I believe she's married to a Jim Socha. I don't know them. They someone influenced them to make an exception to pretend other with someone named Chris White and people associated on and off Fox Connecticut News and the buildings next to them involved with identity thefts and frauds. It also has something to do with a religious spot there involved with the Kerr family and a Perron family who has something to do with, how the public schools and private schools in the past, including religious schools, were involved with abuses of kids that were influenced from off the campuses, and then further on and off the campuses through ulterior motivations, nature's needs, interests, but also juxtaposed with the actual causes of the child abuse of the past, as the identities involved also with identity thefts and frauds, intercities connected, also timed uses of it at the corners of streets relevant. So they also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. It has something to do with their roles with the corner of Town Line Drive and Sosny Highway, where and how they went out of their way for identity thefts and frauds with people who went to my grammar school involved with the interbranch families. Used to be a Caldor on Timeline Drive. Yes, that's true. Tony Smith. So there are locations next to it. Now, John Maiano has a then there's a highway entrance and exit next to it. And Jonathan Maiano lives on the other side of that. And they have roles also with the principal child abuser, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed that Mike Levine, when he was a kid, I never had a conversation with him. They influenced him to make nonverbal confirmation to me. And then as an adult, he has something to do with people associated all along Route 3 and with that corner of Town Line Drive. And that Caldor is now a Walmart and then the shopping center there. There's like a little place where you could drive through or walk through with your bike or whatever. But like if they open up the gate, you could drive a car through. But I saw the only times I saw 2 times in life. Mike Levine, which is one of the names brought up by the child abuser principal, was once right there. And once, so it has something to do. These are also my Saudi source. Was influenced to by something to do with that. Per her roles, where they attached her and me to fake words and locations ties to people on my street since before through so that she knew since before I knew her, that were involved with federal crimes leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since, like with this DeMoro family, tied to the Scalora family, also involved with the people on my street and people tied to them that brought up the untimely deaths in the principal's school and the ones next to it actually recorded involved with identity thefts and frauds. Like with this Subby Scalora, I never had anything to do with Subby Scalora. He went out of his way to pretend other for where and how they call people liars. But I don't know them. We have to say that where people are involved with identity thefts and frauds, where they also have been planting their motivations fake. That's why Subby Scalora was recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, having been lying to me about some girl to boys and girls that weren't even in my class, and one of them that was in my class. But I never had, we were in a class, never had a chance to talk to her. And yeah, so there are twins associated with that corner. And in other words, they're trying to make, I don't know them. And, but people from Central Connecticut State University and with the Department of Transportation and Motor Vehicles, they recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed it has something to do with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and them trying to set up exceptions against me. And sexual circles with a Mark Violet and some military police that said they were involved, and Justin Klavinskis, who said they shared at the same time the Danielle Perron. And God knows what they told her about me. I never had a conversation with Danielle Perron. The only exception was her trying to pretend an exception, which simultaneously was furthering illusions, pretend to lie about how I got to her walking up to me and yelling. When her boyfriend, one of her boyfriends at the time, passed me a joint, the Mark Violet. It also has roles with their roles. They confessed, recorded, demonstrated, confirmed. Before that, they have roles with the buildings of downtown Hartford near the state capitol, with the O'Brien family, the executive police forum family, from other classes in my grade, spreading lies behind my back to other people. And they do it in a way that keeps the sense and sensibilities that affects people to make statements and confessions time. And then, in other words, it make it sound like people knew each other. And they'll tell you we don't know each other. I remember that I used to like that little I don't know if it was what there was a Scatter's grocery store where there is now D'Angelo's. I used to like that Scatter's grocery store. Never had a conversation with Joe Scatter. In other words, but there is also a medical location behind there, and they have entrances and exits to highways. It has something to do with their roles with the entrances and exits next to Central Connecticut State University, and with and New Britain, but in West Hartford also, which connects to one side of it, and the other one connects there. They also have where they put the private police on and off the campuses involved with their extended family members having made roles with identity thefts and frauds, and with the sexual circles relevant because their roles also with judges and prosecutors, with uses of those locations and uses of the self-valued offensive data and evidence perception racketeering, and styles of interbranch men that make confessions about the women tied to them so they can keep the sense and sensibilities of them, self-valued roles with identity thefts and frauds. There's a Subby Bugerio who's also involved with identity thefts and frauds and falsified police reports with a guy he stole speakers from, and with his friends and people associated on off the state judicial branch offices, on off the state prison offices, and on off spots around the community center involved with federal crimes with those adults since they were kids, and with their family members and neighbors they employed to involvements with this. One of the things they are commonly are natures of identity theft, frauds, and instances roles. Also relevant to where and how they have us forced to use other people's names. So they have Walker Hill parallels the Southstein Highway, but it doesn't touch it. See, the corner of Walker Hill and Wells Road has something to do with people from New Britain Superior Court and Hartford courts and Middle Town courts, with people who used depositions and who used communications with people's principals and teachers to put fake things into databases that others would have to respond to, and everyone having to use each other's names. So they kept and keep styles of sense and sensibilities. Need to pretend that they're relying because others were reusing their name and stuff like that. So Church Street in Old Weathersfield, Joe DeMoro and Mike Kerr confirmed. People on my street use them for roles with federal crimes at other houses on Church Street with the Heather Hansen and her brothers and her parents involved with identity thefts and frauds with them. Also falsified police reports. There's a DeMoro family with the Weathersfield police involved with falsified police reports and drugs and medicines crimes at the same time with middle school kids that affected motivated roles with such as roles with identity theft frauds. They used to have roles with drugs and alcohol and timing where people are going to be, so they could lie about how they got there, and they could lie about, so they could exploit that and how people need to use their names, and they are forced to need to use our names per where and how everyone speaks through each other, per what I caught them using corners for, including on schools, for identity thefts, frauds, what I caught them using police equipment for, simultaneously pretending I had conversations with them about this. That's why we need to get them on paper. The Weathersfield police, their family members too. That's why the more they wait, the more they're bringing in the wood they don't want. There's a Jessica Cintron I never met, never had a class, never saw her around. There's a Jonathan Mayana who brought her up into this, and his brother confirmed roles with insidiousness, natures of identity theft, frauds, instances, intercities and interstates coordinated. They have roles with state police and police forms with Vermont. Also involved with the Mike Roberts, with identity thefts and frauds with the houses on my street. That also got involved where intercities they affected confessions to me as roles with real or made up an untimely death on Trinity College, and they coupled it with fabricating a fake letter and lying to my teachers and their families about me, including my professors, as ones who were involved with lying to my teachers behind my back about me. And on Facebook, there's Anthony Yagman involved with various doctors and like a Leahy family, and with Dr. Dingleberry and or Dr. Dewberry, who was also roles with criminally foreign influence uses of the sense and sensibilities of my English teacher, Miss Sickbaldi. And so on Griswold too, they have uses of the parts of Griswold where they've been pretending passions and emotions and affecting other strangers to pretend passions and emotions. Years back, a guy was killed on Griswold Street by a car. A guy who owned a laundry place, and there was a Paul Zano with a laundry place who was involved when he was a kid, fabricating things into databases with doctors of his or others, and involved with my grammar school. He's involved with identity thefts and frauds. I never had anything to do with him, including they tried to make an exception by putting him next to me at an assembly one time. How many times that was? I never had anything, communications with him because he has roles trying to. He has roles like identity thefts and frauds and slanders with complete strangers and people on my street involved with the Wethersfield police, further with their doctors and some drug cliques on my street. And I don't know all their names, but there's a guy involved with there are patients and criminals involved on my street with some doctors at Hartford Hospital and their nurses, families, foreign and domestic. They also made confirmed confessions on Facebook. Yes, so there's people that understand the streets like you, Tony Smith, who have been using wherever everyone is going to be to keep roles, to hide lipoaggressions where they've been preventing mandated law offensively. For example, forcing not just the child abuses of the types that were recorded and found by me first hid. There are other natures of child abuse juxtaposed in their uses of it. So we have these Mendes police, and we have ones I don't know the names of, and we have generations of their families involved with the policing of the schools that have some ties to that shopping center at Caldor, and a Spada family and Pandolf family confirmed roles with some judges, family members, like a Delafair family, having influenced them to roles with identity thefts and frauds and slanders, and with a Mayano family, with houses next to and locations next to the shopping center where Caldor used to be, where Walmart is now, where it used to be a food mart. Now it's a Stop and Shop. They have the managers of different companies involved with the intelligence community, criminally foreign influenced. So they use roles with the sense and sensibilities of everybody. So there's something to do with people I don't know at all and people that I barely know and only in contexts that are connected where they had roles painting arrays relevant to their roles positing falsified police reports roles and identities of sequence shifts, simultaneous, identity thefts and fraud, slanders roles. As the people involved now with wire crimes of the Wethersfield police forging and switching names, needed to hide from and value hurt, lied to, and having been lied to, Judge Napolitano, etc. That's why there are proofs that there are allegations made against Judge Napolitano by people that were making that up because they need to pretend motivations and passions other than are, because they already did that at locations and there were actually recorded means to demonstrate that. They have something, they were trying to record me. They're trying to fake me tied to recorded people. They were trying to film me looking like I was tied to people at the corner of J Street, I think it is, and the street the street on that goes by the side of the Wethersfield High School, the one that connects to Wells Road. At the corner of that right there, they have people involved, a bunch of instances, different people that I don't know the names of, are involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. And it's not, and it's they're and I'm only aware of it because there are strangers went all of their way to pretend to know me. So they needed to hide they needed to hide what's actually recorded regarding their motivations for responses to when I say that, because I don't even know their names. I know there's an IO family, and I don't know what's his name. Not IO. Anthony Yagman and his brothers and his family members are involved with the Phil Cololo and with these Mendez police, with wire crimes, and with the Wethersfield Police Department, and with something that has to do with the Town Line Drive, Southstein Highway corner, a whole bunch of different ways through time. A whole bunch of people I don't know the names of, tied to the ones I do, that were involved with Judge Smith speaking fake things into records. There's a Judge Killian who spoke fake things in records to them too. They have some doctors further involved with drugs and medicines crimes and physical delusions with their patients and criminals since before they got caught. People with Hartford Hospital has something to do with their roles with that corner and the medical location and all that. As the people involved further World Trade Center federal crimes, World Trade Center federal crimes with the courts next to it. There's Ninth Circuit Court in Manhattan next to the World Trade Center towers where they were right before the attack. So also, Joe DeMoro confessed and recorded, for example, that there was how the other boys shared his girlfriend and how he pretended to like it. He didn't say it like that, but he said one context he pretended to like it. When as strangers, he was making confessions with Mike Kerr and his family. Has something to do with the houses at the corner of Church Street and Main Street in Old Wethersfield that is also involved with the news media and their stories where they use that corner. And they has something to do with a whole bunch of ties to predicate acts at Central Connecticut State University and names associated also with that corner, with identity theft, frauds, instances, roles, and offensively creating exceptions, having exceptions created by others too. Though, so we use each other's names. So these are games that were used by the people involved with the witch trials place and the fact treatments by the George Washington roles with having to counter extort them right there since founding. So there are people associated on my street with the name Cololo, but they have extended family members with a Phil Cololo. Phil Cololo specifically was brought up by Bob Chase, a man named Bob Chase with forensics locations, who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, recorded, confessed, making up fake things into databases with the principal child offender before he was caught, and with various natures of doctors. Intercities have through time, like with the ones that were with criminals stealing things, and with people that were stealing from, faking police reports, roles with the police too, involved with federal crimes, juxtaposed natures, with the court speaking fake things into records with that. The one thing they all recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, they have roles with adults on off the like named O'Brien family, with things, with confessions and demonstration of their roles with the buildings outside next to the state capitol, and it has something to do with the locations next to the Connecticut news media. So Oh no, this is we can count this. We have to follow mandated law. We have to have the we have to counter the police families intercities playing these games, and fishing for information with the overt criminal enterprises and people involved with identity thefts and fraud. They can't go back and make proper counters to things like missing persons problems, to things like what I caught them doing with the locations next to reported body dumping spots, real or made up, as people involved out of the state judicial branch offices and the street next to it, or locations next to it, and all along Route 3 involve identity theft, frauds, instances, connections between it that are evidences. So one thing that we have to counter is how they pretend people make theories. One of the things they did to prevent people from telling on and using the what is hyper-evidential regarding treatments of black and white in slavery. See, kids have an immediate need and means to discern criminal insidiousness natures of positive and negative treatments and identity treatments being used when our formal fact treatment natures make opinions about what slavery was about. For example, by making opinions about what the Civil War was about. The breaching method measures and maintains them, blaming other things, others, ourselves, and valuing that, rather than being capable of explaining what the Civil War was about properly. Now, those identities are also identities of a complete remote possession of the black leaders of Connecticut and of the black women leaders of Connecticut, the black male and female, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, and as recorded per their roles with KKK, Confederate flag themed, and sexual circle like fake integrity of men, sick, fake punk men hiding behind guns. They have all these guns in their houses and stuff like that, and their identity thefts and frauds and crimes with police equipment, timing where people are going to be, and just delusions wrought simultaneously, preventing us free speech to be calm and preventing us from raising our voices by then engaging that and using the time to put sequence shifts and all the fakes regarding the value of raising our voices. So we have to raise our voices, and we need to have calm. We need to be able to simultaneously calmly respond to the various Connecticut courts and people off the state judicial branches offices, people off the state prison offices. So like this Lance Cuddy involved with confessions from that tied to a bagel and a former Mayor Gold spreading lies about people through time. Like a Lance Cuddy has roles with forensics locations also recorded involved with federal crimes with the news media, and a Joshua Julian and forensic locations through time, involved also with various natures of cases and depositions and the locations of the depositions being and having been used criminally by them, and the various crime scenes locations. So we are a hyper crime scene, modern countries A through Z. But so in other words, we have to remember that this is what this is about: getting them on paper, getting them to respond. Because Weathersfield police already attached me to fake conversations with themselves as these Mendez brothers through time. So make sure, because they did this on the New Britain Superior Court, they have rules with predicate acts that way. Relevant, and they have roles with predicate acts on off the Weathersfield Police Department relevant, and they have roles with predicate acts on off Hartford locations like the buildings next to Fox Connecticut News and as Fox Connecticut News, and as the roles of the family members associated with those buildings, associated with them with juxtaposed natures of federal crimes with evidences and with other people's names, and their roles with uses of people on off Two-Rail Highway and where it runs into Hangdog Lane involved identity theft, fraud, slanders, sequence shifts that are one of the things that show the whole array of people with that. And people like Weathersfield Pizzas right next to the state judicial branch offices. They have a job. They have Stephen Stockel involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders with Weathersfield police, fabricating audio and video wire crimes with him, and inter campuses involved through time. I never conversation with me lied and pretend to meet a fake words, because these are police forms that are criminally foreign influence, and there are their roles with it. Also with the people out of the judicial branch offices and their family members being having been used remotely. So we have to get them from the background, and onto paper. They're preventing mandated law. They're increasingly needing to hide this from Judge Napolitano. They've been planting evidences around my house and other people's houses too, not just on Facebook, but it's even recorded on Facebook as their roles with digital crimes with upskirt natures proven, leaders of the kids, because they have other natures of crime methods associated with it. And they need to hide about their motivations, like doctors that are involved with their patients and criminals and natures of organized crime that they were furthering with them before they got caught. They do things like pretending they're trying to control people on social media by roles, pretending needing to pretend they're involved uses of kids that they already involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. In other words, there are a whole bunch of people that went to my grammar school who got involved with identity thefts and frauds, with people with my middle school who I didn't even have classes with, never even saw them around campus. One time they may try to make an exception with Joe Domoro and with one of the Mendez brothers and their family and friends and teachers criminally involved and people involved with programs with them growing up. Joe Domoro said there were doctors involved, psychological doctors involved with the Eric Mendez criminally involved. Further with the principal child and identity theft. I never had a camp class with him. It has something to do also with food bag and people with, I forgot the name of there's a family that confirmed, one of them confirmed to me they're involved with this Mendez police and people that are involved with the shopping centers intercities and with like where the Howard Johnson's is. It's like there's like a Dakota restaurant and there's an on the border place. They're involved with like a Rob Rodriguez and the former director of the FBI and with the police department, people involved with some drugs and medicines crimes, identity thefts and frauds, also with some foreign and domestic nurses, families, and doctors, foreign and domestic, involved with identity thefts and frauds, instances, roles with those locations. People offensively need to pretend lies about their motivations for approaching others. For example, also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed with narratives regarding the counters to the principal child abuser that was also recorded in collusion with him before that, those narratives. So make sure you follow mandated law for Wethersfield Police Chief 1 year ago and whatever one is now, and responding for that police chief and his family, like Jessica Cintron, as one of the ones further involved with the principal's child abuse campus. He's in jail, so he can't respond. You better get me a response from the campuses too, because they have further leaders of the kids that roles then and now, replacing what is actually audio and video actually recorded with fabricated audio and video. They have the sensibilities of the military involved here as pseudo integrity too. In other words, they want us and need us to fight about that, forcing us to use everyone speaking through other people. I don't know the people on the Board of Education. All exceptions, exception nature, they lied about and had that for strict hurt and persuaded. Has something to do with these Dillon families. Make sure I get a response because they are further on my street involved roles with the people involved with the violence and with smoke. With the narratives, a whole bunch of different sources of it, not just the house with a lot of the smoke constantly coming out. There are other houses they involved with that. Also with the confessions of their roles with Jewish hate crimes as Jewish people, with cliques with their friends that with Jewish hate crimes in their language, as their roles with identity thefts and frauds from behind other people's backs, and as their roles with nutbags with the other religions too. You'll see. You have some sick, demented men and women leaders of the religions. You need to have them follow mandated law with the courts. I'll show you what the religions were. See, the religions knew that their stewards were going to be criminally foreign influenced, and they left us means to demonstrate that, to catch them. Pseudo stewardship of the what and how they were properly supposed to be in the stewardships of religion and of the sciences, of sports. They have the sports coaches recorded how involved with identity theft, for everyone speaking to other and uses of that. So have a great day. Your many pray vaccines force these people onto paper. And I never had a conversation with Jennifer Smith in my life. There are people tied to an Eric Klotz, and that also is involved with the former Mayor Gold and the O'Brien family with identity thefts and frauds. In fact, human nature oriented, falsified police reports and wire crime acts and methods roles. Here. So means appear. So in other words, so there was something to do with people with the religious spot next to Fox Connecticut News too, and the buildings next to it, where their child abuse with as this Perone family associated also with the Department of Motor Vehicles, Department of Transportation, and with the Kerr family, and with the Morrow family and the Cloaking family. Years ago, they used that mobile gas station brought up by someone here as one of the ones involved with a Judge Smith and with a Jennifer Smith through time involved with federal crimes. With Eric Klotz, for example, he was influenced to time when last time I saw him make confessions about his ties to Central Connecticut State University when I asked me if he wanted to ride though. To be fair, at the corner of Griswold Street and Fair Lane Drive. Now there is also a Kerr family that recorded fast demonstrated confirmed that they involved him with their identity thefts and frauds and people with sexual circles. And Eric Klotz's pretending passions and emotions tied to his girlfriend was rubbing my shoulders, trying to rub my shoulders when I was driving a car. And with some of the people involved, where they tried to make an exception with the people then who are involved now with identity thefts, fraud, slanders, then now where they're trying to make exceptions, juxtaposed with complete strangers. There's a car with two guys over at the corner of Fair Lane. What does that mean? What does that mean? Because you'll see things that you didn't, you guys set traps and there are counter traps. So just one raps, boxing. Don't pretend passion and emotions on here, especially if you're a judge. Follow mandated law. Years ago, accident with on Griswold. Remember, I said that first, Tony Smith. Remember, I noted after you brought up first though how there was a you brought up something that made me bring up the how there was a laundromat associated with it because there's a Zano family involved with laundromat on Route 3 and one involved near the Southstein Middle School. That's further involved with foreign and domestic families with drugs and medicines crimes. Also with this Dr. Graham and various natures of courts, judges and their family members and people associated with them, with fabricating things into databases, etc. So there's something to do about how a Peruta family is Russian, how they have roles with identity thefts and frauds against me in the form of their roles with falsified police reports, also with their lawyer, and their roles with the Wethersfield police chief. Also his lawyer's role with the Wethersfield police chief, involved also criminally with them with the corner of Elm Street and Rocky Hill and Route 3. And since before Mazzucato Bakery went there, Mazzucato's Bakery is one of the extended family members, owned by one of the extended family members of the Wethersfield police chief. There's a Reno Mazzucato, I don't know his brother's name, and and I don't know his sister's name, but they're also recorded involved with identity theft, fraud, sequence shifts, slanders, too, are important with people like, preventing mandated law with the families. They also bring their family members in because they need to pretend passions and emotions because their actual motivations are recorded other than they pretended already. They painted themselves into corners. Has something to do with how Trinity College and CCSU had roles through time with campuses in other cities and spots next to them that have been coordinating identity thefts and frauds instances, try to film exceptions, try to film the appearance of exceptions, and they only get away with it because they're being used to maintain all evidence reception formal and informal and collusion against proper evidence reception, data reception, quote, facts reception, unquote. But we have facts finding missions used to hide how they got caught themselves using criminally foreign influence, using sequence shifts, etc. So, thank you. So they use the businesses next to the places, and everyone speaks through investigators who have been using the right to lie, but they don't have the right to lie. Foreign and domestic. There's something to do with other countries, with the people that recorded, confessed, and demonstrated uses of Elm Street locations criminally and of Route 3 as their roles on off the state judicial branch offices with federal crimes, identity theft, frauds behind my back when I was in middle school, as people do the same thing when I was in grammar school. And then they did the same thing when I was in high school. And they covered it up by even their roles, has something to do with, the intercities. They're placed across the street from a place in Route 3 that used to sell boats. That has something to do with a Chet Casper and his friend involved with identity thefts and frauds. I don't even know his friend's name. I only know all their names because everyone's speaking through other. His friend though is confirmed, confessed, demonstrated, recorded. He was involved furthering fake things about me. And from contacts, there's no place to respond. These people are roles with all that tied to where and how they prevent writing, while intervention they've been fabricating audio and video with their patients and criminals. And as roles with that breaching method that kept and keeps this the outcome /S. So they have locations. They have a Scalera family that painted themselves like with this Jim Socha. I never had a conversation with him in my life. I made the exception, but was partially them making the exception on Central Connecticut State University. They're involved with methods of bound or predicate acts with that CNN sources are involved with on off Central Connecticut State University in New Britain and each side of it distinctly because it's fact cheating age oriented. It's the time where people are going to go because they were used already remotely. Also on Walker Hill has something to do with military families involved with identity thefts and frauds with the other countries and with how they lied to their girlfriends and how that also has roles to people that went back to my grammar school from other classrooms as weirdos pretending they're cool and stuff like that too, because they want to make you call them a name so they can make you sound like you speak bad about others. There's sequence shift values all kinds of way. So you guys, please make sure I get a response from Wethersfield Schools and the Wethersfield Board of Education too now, and their family members. You want to go deeper? Make sure I get a response so we don't have to keep mentioning more names and demonstration of it, which is also evidences. I just lost my tooth. I have a brand new smile. Boxing's a wild boxings. I'll show you how to deal with child abusers and with these fake cops and found. You can't speak for mandated law. I'm going to show you how to speak for mandated law. I'm going to show the people what was on their schools and what is on their schools. Now, fear God for hiding this, what I caught you doing with those families of the girls that you affected the confessions made from my kid when they had all those boyfriends at the same time, including your uses of all along Ridge Road and people associated with Paul Kelly and with his neighbors in that corner of that street. You watch now. Get those motherfuckers on paper. Excuse my language. Make sure I get the fucking dirty rat scumbag courts, family members, and police forms with the overt criminal enterprises and private ones. You'll see. Bound. I'll gather around. You think that integrity spoke for Hartford, Connecticut? You think for integrity spoke for one suburb, let alone a city across the board of countries, A through Z? Hey, people see, discern. I teach you true and long, so I must learn. So make sure Weathersfield Board of Education and parents that I am responded to, because they've been lying to you. You know this is what is actually recorded. They have further people. They have a guy with the name Emmett, and further people. In other words, with the leadership of the kids, further involved with various natures of abuses of kids, as roles even with people with sexual and medical, and as doctors. You watch the six sons of bitches involved with these games in the background, these wire crimes with the phones at the schools that the police and courts have been coaching roles with. Make sure I get a response for this. Make sure you get them the one name and sequence into branch two. Say sorry to the judges, people involved with this. Make sure. Yeah, she means a beer. Show this to Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN. Make sure they don't pretend it's personal, because they were asked calmly a bunch of times to respond. And their motivations for not responding, they were dishonest about too. They recorded themselves that way.